Hello, and welcome to the Rough Edges podcast with Sarah I. Fox. In this podcast, I will guide you through my faith and mental health journey to dispel the stigma surrounding mental illness and to create an empowering resource for those who wish to discover more about these topics. I pray that this podcast will not only bless you, but that it will bring growth and healing to our communities. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Rough Edges. Today, I am so excited to introduce my guest. His name is Ethan, a native of Coatesville, Pennsylvania, and resides in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. He is an alumni of Lancaster J.P. McCaskey High School, Harrisburg Area Community College, and Millersville University. Poetic is the CEO and founder of Ethan A. Poetic LLC, empowering people towards overcoming their adversities, life challenges, and hardships. His story involves overcoming a near fatal car accident, facing 99% of death versus 1% of life with a high risk surgery. Several days later, he woke up and was declared a walking, living miracle. Poetic is a keynote speaker, life coach, mentor, mental health advocate, self published author, certified mediator, certified restorative justice, and circles facilitator. He's inspiring the youth, adults, community leaders, and entire world by being present at after school programs, networking events, sporting events, music, and community engagement. Seeing himself inside the youth, relating to their personal struggles with poverty, single parent household, and needing positive leadership. Poetic's life is a true example for exemplifying outstanding progress of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. He is also a former member of the International Lions Club. Poetic was featured on 6 ABC Action News of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, for speaking at Kings Highway Elementary School of Coatesville, Pennsylvania. He received a letter of recognition from the City of Coatesville Council members and City Manager James Logan. He received the Distinguished Alumni Award from HACC, Central Pennsylvania's Community College. Poetic was featured in the Millersville University Review magazine, Inspirational Story on CBS 21 of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and Inspirational Story WFMZ TV 69 News of Reading, Pennsylvania. Welcome, Ethan.
Thank you for the introduction.
Yes, absolutely. Ethan, before we dive into our topic for today, I want to know what are 3 things that you can't live without and why?
Air, because I have to breathe. Not know I have to continue to know my purpose and make sure I have a why.
Yes, absolutely. I resonate with what you said about knowing what your purpose is. And I know that you have such a dynamic story. Can you tell me more about your journey, especially in managing your mental health after you suffered a fatal car accident?
For several years, I would go through the waves of emotion when the anniversary would come up. But it wasn't until I got interviewed by the Southeast Times newspaper, and when it finally got published on the front page, then I saw 2 words that stood out. It was called survivor's remorse. That explained everything. What people saw from the outside looking in the beginning stages of me recovering was inspiration, determination. But what I'm experiencing was vulnerability and humility because I wasn't planning on talking about this. You know, just life happens, pushing people outside their comfort zone. I used to work with kids in after school programs. Parents will talk to me and show me their cell phone, me being in that car accident. And I'm just thinking, I moved forward from that. But eventually I was able to get interviewed, featured on people's televisions, podcasts, newspapers, and much more. Then they see more of the evolved version of me in due time.
And I can only imagine what it must have been like to not only experience that, but to learn how to recover from that. Like, what was the recovery process like for you? And what was the hardest part of learning how to manage?
My recovery part included rehab, speech therapy, being on a feeding tube, being in people's prayers, a special anointment. It was just a humbling experience of going from having ability to not having ability to trying to figure out how to get back. The hardest parts were just my parents weren't supportive. Like as I talk about in my book called The Inspirational Story of Ethan A. Poetic Chronicles of Adversity, Education, Sports, Relationships, and Resiliency. My mom wasn't making healthy choices with the money, and she wasn't paying the rent. And I didn't understand why she was giving money to a man over the internet. But it wasn't until I realized she was going through survivor's remorse because the year before my car accident, I lost a brother to gun violence. She lost her firstborn son to gun violence. And that's something I didn't understand how it affects a parent. I've seen parents bear their own child, but this was just wild. For over $2,000 of back rent, and I testified against her to save my livelihood because I didn't like someone taking advantage of me at my lowest point.
Hmm.
And she did kick me out. I was homeless, but the homeless didn't define me. When it came to my dad, it was just a situation where he sent his wife to tell me while we're having lunch, he's not gonna help me get my life back together.
Mm.
When I did get my life back together, I had a car. It was a 2016 Honda Civic, brand new, right at the showroom. I was had my picture taken in Coatesville, Pennsylvania, at the welcome sign. As I'm walking back to my car, I hear someone yell for me. I see my dad at the stoplight. It's red. He sees me go to my car, and his jaw drops. And
Mm.
that's when he realized he can't take credit for helping me get my driver's license, having a car. I can say I did it without him. I'm just telling you, life's gonna happen, and it's the people that are closest to you. They're either gonna help you, bless you, or try to tear you, or have the sink in with you in it.
Mm.
And it's gonna show up in many areas in your life. When you outgrow people, not everyone that comes with you goes with you.
I'm sorry that you had to go through all of those difficult moments. And I'm also glad that you were able to not only take that difficult moment and use it to propel you forward, but you continued in your resilience. And that is something that is incredibly inspiring. And speaking of inspiring stories, you wrote a book that you mentioned, the inspirational story of Ethan A. Poetic. Like, can you share more about your journey in writing that book and what inspired you to write this book?
Well, before I wanted to write a book, I always wanted to do a book about poetry. But then in my spring semester of college during COVID, after I passed my classes, I got invited to Verona's house for lunch. As we're sitting around, one person mentioned I should write a book, and another person mentioned it, and I'm like outvoted. It's hard to say no when people are feeding you and give me something to drink. Eventually, I got started. Once I got started, publishers start contacting me. I had to turn them down because they weren't offering a good that deal that was too good to pass up on. One publisher was offering me a deal where I paid her $5,000 just to create a softcover book and make money off my book for every book that sells online. And another company offered me they'll not only help publish my book, they also turn my story into a movie with a music soundtrack. Problem is they'll get most of the money, and I can't let that happen. So I ended up becoming a self-published author because I just can't let someone try to profitize off my name, image, and likeness. When the reality is that, do you understand my story? I remember being in the hospital, rehab, on a feeding tube. I remember you being there when I'm in college. I remember you being there at my college ceremony. Me getting interviewed on television and everything else. I understand this is business, but I have to look out for my own best interest because the day I make a documentary and a movie with a music soundtrack, it's staying in my family to create generational wealth. You look at Ice Cube, one of his first movies was Friday. It became a classic, a hit. From that, that led to many more movies, therefore creating generational wealth to the point where he made sure his son went through acting school to play him. It's resonating in a lot of places, prisons, schools, colleges, communities, social media. It was one of the best decisions I ever made because I ended up creating four versions of my book: a soft cover, hardcover laminated case, ebook, and an audio book. It's available on Amazon, Audible, and all major platforms. People normally buy my soft cover and hardcover through me directly because they want the autograph version.
That is incredible to see that you were able to put your story into book form and impact so many people's lives. What was the impact that you've seen so far, and what is the impact that you hope the book will continue to make?
I remember when I used to work inside the school buildings, the teacher said she researched me, and instead of her doing a math and reading, she wanted me to tell my story to the kids.
Wow.
I did it. I wasn't ready. I wasn't prepared. And the kids were just shocked. They took their iPads out and wanted to take pictures with me, asked for my autograph, told their parents, eventually told the principal and then the other kids and the teachers. And all of a sudden, it's just spread like wildfire from there. There was another time in another school, the teacher said he was going to take a coffee break. Just tell them the story about you being in your book. Then eventually I did get featured on television. It was at Kings Highway Elementary School. I remember leading up to it where I was at the coastal area football team's banquet and fundraiser. It was this teacher and her husband saying, I'm going to speak at one of these schools in Coastville and be on television. So they were already speaking it into existence. Then there's this guy who works at 6 ABC Action News. His name's Mateo. I decided to just send him a DM on Facebook. Within half an hour, 45 minutes, he said yes and choose any school I want to. I contacted her. We talked. She talked to the principal, and it just so happens me and that principal's family already known each other well over 40 years.
Wow.
Her name is Dr. Bridget Miles. Her husband is Dr. Vincent Miles. And she ended up talking to the superintendent who gave the green light. Then I had a conversation with her, Dr. Bridget Miles, the principal, did an overview. And when it was time for me to come to the school, she did all the behind the scenes work of making sure the students were ready to be themselves. Teachers had their picture waiver form and recordings assigned. After that, I was allowed to speak, show my awards, read out the book, did that private interview on the side with Mateo, took pictures with the kids, signed autographs. It was a match made in heaven because I'm originally from Coatesville as a native. And it was just a big time thing. And then when it finally get released, I was in Coastal for the reenactment of the MLK March. And then, a lot of people remember me by my books and everything. The next day, I got featured on 6 ABC Action News, and my cell phone just blew up. I never seen so many people sending texts, leaving voicemails, requesting me on Facebook. There were people on social media that trusted me with their mailing addresses and PO boxes saying, we want to buy the book from you directly and support you. And they paid me through Cash App, Venmo, and Zelle. It was just positivity come back to the community, the school, the surrounding areas, the alumni of Coatesville, the leaders, the elders of Coatesville, making people proud, not just for sports, but for someone to graduate college twice without an academic or athletic scholarship. And then for the coaches, they get to show that to their student athletes.
Mm.
That's going to light a fire in them and much more.
Wow, that is incredible just to see the amount of people that had such a positive reception to your story. And it is a story of hope because it shows that you were able to be resilient and to overcome and to create that lasting impact in other people's lives. Is there a moment that you remember that really touched you, like somebody told you about how your book impacted them? Was there a moment like that that you could share?
There's several moments. Principals buy my books, take a picture with them, then kids wanting to buy my book, then their parents do some business with me. And then there were times where certain people were asking for a free book, and I had to tell them, I value my services and my products. My book is free at the Lancaster City Library because a person who bought my book, bought a couple of them, paid me directly and told them donate it to the library. Then there's also times where certain people want me to read the book so they can imagine listening to the audiobook ahead of time. Because I read the audiobook myself. Then there's also been times of kids saying, Mommy, I saw his book.
Oh,
And I'm like, wow. Then there's having the book sign days, one in Lancaster, Mills University, Coatesville. It was an impactful thing that I didn't see beyond measure or life's coming attraction until I started living it, not just existing. When I'm talking about living, I'm talking about when the principal talked about my book and their professional development. You need resiliency to be an educator. You're dealing with a lot of kids in the classroom. You got to be patient, professional, and everything else. Then it also goes back to my book being used for people who are on parole and probation in Lancaster County. Build some resiliency in them so that way when they read my book and talk it over with their parole or probation officer, they don't come back into the system. Therefore, we can keep a higher retention rate of them becoming a productive member of society. Similar to those who are in juvenile, not only, they get to read the book, hopefully they learn a trade. That way, when they get out, they go straight to work. They can get certifications there in juvie as long as the right program and curriculum's there. And it's everything's still selling consistently. It's just a matter of just take it one day, 1 hour, 1 minute at a time. Because at the end of the day, I realize it's bigger than just me. It's just
mm.
about impacting lives. 'Cause I never know what somebody's going through. And how I try to stay grounded is look at if somebody in prison, whether it's county, state, or federal penitentiary, they wear my shoes. They were my spot of opportunity and open doors. And I'm just saying that from a humble perspective because a lot of smart guys are in prison. It's just they weren't given the right opportunity or dealt the wrong parts of life. And maybe they weren't as resilient. But ultimately, it's bigger than just me because I may be the face of my book, but I'm speaking a lot of stories that can relate to people.
I love what you said about people understanding the importance of being empathetic with others in their journeys. I love that you recognized that not only do you have the opportunity to help other people, but you realize that there are opportunities you've been given to give back. I appreciate that aspect of your story. I also want to talk about men's mental health because this season on the podcast, I'm talking about what it means for men to be comfortable speaking out about their mental health and seeking support. So, what are your thoughts on the stigma surrounding men expressing their emotions and seeking help for their mental health?
Men were always taught to be this tough guy, suppress things and hold it in. But eventually, it's going to show up in different areas when it comes to drinking and being addicted to certain things to release that tension. Unfortunately, a lot of men are raised in single parent households and not being taught the true meaning of manhood. Manhood comes from learning your history. Like, for example, in African culture, when a boy turns between 9 and 11, he'll be in the hut and the father's gonna have him choose. Do you still want to be attached to your mom, or do you want to learn about this manhood? He has to choose for himself. The mom is attached because of that birth. The mom's not supposed to be attached to a child and depend on that person emotionally, physically, and spiritually because that's a boy. You can't be treating your own son like a man child. That's
Right.
going to cause resentment and problems in the near future. This is
Mm.
a boy who's supposed to be a man while he's young, not when he gets older. And eventually, that boy's going to decide to leave the hunt, and that mom may cry. But after her tears, she'll be proud that her son chose and made that decision.
Mm.
And part of manhood in the African culture was learn how to hunt, defend, honor, and other things. She gets to learn what womanhood is from women that are older than her that's going to tell her the truth on what she needs to hear, not what she wants to hear. I learned this one rule. Number one, don't go on a date with a guy without bringing your own money. Number two, don't go on a date with a guy if you're not interested in him because it's got to be bigger than just food.
Yeah.
And three, pride that person properly vetted. Even if you don't have a healthy relationship with your own father, bring in your uncle, community leader, pastor, or even go to therapy, or go to counseling, or have your principal vent this guy out. Because more than just someone looking good, feeling good, it's about what's going on inside and where is this person going to evolve into.
Mm.
The other aspect of men's mental health is being willing to be in a safe space. Men be in a barber shop, maybe in a bar, because there's times where certain women cross the line with weaponizing that stuff against somebody.
Mm.
We can't have this double standard where a woman be vulnerable to a man, but he doesn't weaponize that stuff against her. The other situation is just understanding that life happens, life has its challenges, and there's a time and place for everything. But we have to prioritize our mental health, or it's going to show up in different areas. For example, there's certain things I had to overcome, such as survivor's remorse. And it starts showing up in my life at certain times. For example, when I was putting with my health and on that feeding tube, I was at the Mia Heights golf tournament. And I can say this, as I said in my book, there's this guy named Jordan Steffi, who was actually still currently the board member and founder of his nonprofit called Talo Prep. The golf tournament was an attempt to bring Michael Vick there to speak, but unfortunately, he allegedly missed his plane. Jordan, he used to play football, basketball, and track. His position was quarterback in football. He saw me. I knew that look in his eye where he's going to call me up, which he did. He made this speech, and three things happened. I was not feeling comfortable in that situation, but neither did he. I was experiencing survivor's remorse. The key thing I remember hearing was Ethan's going to graduate with a college degree. So he already spoke it into existence and shocked the world. The third thing, I ended up graduating with two college degrees. I did the work, and I'm the first out of, the men of my generation for maybe both sides of my family have a college degree, not one, but two. And it just goes to show that there is reward on the other side of your mental health. Like this one quote I learned, I'll give you beauty for your.
Mm.
Another quote I'll leave you with is a reason why the turtle beats the rabbit in the race. Because you don't have to rush, take your time. Certain things weren't taught to us by our own moms and certain people. So they didn't want to raise up a person to be a prince and a king. We wonder why we have certain men that are supposed to be in their place of birthrights, be more committed, and not accepting this whole cohabitation, friend zone, and sipping and breadcrumbing. So when you start setting boundaries on what you're not going to accept and will accept, you create a standard and start closing doors on people to try to play you and try to take you off your purpose. If not, life happens and You just don't want to be on the wrong side of the equation. You want to be on the right side of the equation.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And it is unfortunate, like you said, a lot of men grow up in single parent households or they grow up not really seeing a good example of manhood and what it means to actually navigate their mental health. I love that you said to pull into a community of being a strong resource for you to be able to not only manage your mental health, but develop that resilience and hope to be able to move forward. Hello again. Before you dive into the rest of today's episode, I just wanted to say thank you so much for your support and for hitting that play button. If you want to expand on that support, here are 3 ways that you can do so. 1. Leave a review. If anything in today's episode resonated with you, or you would want to share about how the podcast changed your life, you can do so by leaving a review on Apple Podcast or Podchaser. 2. Check out our shop. The Rough Edges Shop is a faith based, women of color owned online shop where you can get a variety of products from tote bags, journals, t shirts, and more. 20% of the proceeds go to a mental health organization. So check it out at roughedgespodcast.com/shop. 3. Connect on social media. Rough Edges is on a wide variety of social media platforms, including Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and more. If you want to connect outside of listening to the podcast episodes, you can do so on these platforms. If you have any questions, you can check out the episode description or stay to the end for more information. Now, enjoy your episode. I do want to share some statistics with you regarding men's mental health from a Self Space, a mental health website. It says 40% of men have never spoken to anyone about their mental health, and 29% of these men say that they are too embarrassed to speak about it, while 20% say that there is a negative stigma. What are your thoughts on these statistics? Do any of them ring true for you?
Yes and no. The true part is some men are the unhealed versions of themselves as kids. Certain things happen to them, whether it's a father leaving the house, edge of them sexually. Some people grow up faster than others due to a mom trying to treat a boy like a man child. And then there's also some things that go undiagnosed. The best example I can give you is myself. I grew up in a single parent household of 5, and there's a reason behind it. No matter how someone looks innocent, there's a reason behind it. I'll just cut to the chase and say my mom repeated the same cycle as 2 of the men she was with. She repeated the same cycle their moms did, having multiple kids with multiple men. So that's why it goes back to properly vetting somebody,
Mm-hmm.
knowing what their family history is. So the vet, because what happens far too often is passing down generational trauma, wounds, scars. And these are things we're not meant to carry. These are things we're meant to turn around for its own glory and good.
Right.
And I'm saying that from a perspective of it's things we have to unpack, whether it's in the closet, our minds, our hearts, kitchen closet. So we start carrying things we're not meant to carry. We're going to be in places where we're not supposed to be at. Wrong place, wrong time. And we experience delays. As far as the statistics goes, that's the number equation. The question becomes, where's that data from? Who was their study? And was it a mixture of every culture? Because in other cultures, I realized they do prioritize men's health because they stuck to that traditionalism. We need to raise strong boys, but also make sure they know the way of the world so that we don't see them in jail, the wrong side of the law. We want to help them become productive members of society. Same thing with women. Make sure she's with someone that's mentally stable. Some of this goes back to the feminist movement where they're incentivized by the government to push out the man out of the household by not being a provider. Therefore, the school district works with the feminists saying, oh, we can get federal state funding from the government to pay a teacher that specializes in special education. And they make up these things in someone's IEP plans. The reality is that who's really helping this child read,
Mm.
write, this other stuff at home so they become part of the general population and evolved. Statistics aren't everything because I went from being a statistic to being a success story.
Yes.
And I'm telling you that from experience. I'm telling you, when I research, here's the federal consensus report. I look at my IEP plan and I said to my dad's face, you weren't present to advocate for me. Not one time.
Mm.
He was quiet. I'm just telling you because I experienced what he experienced when he was in a single parent household. But he went from being a statistic to eventually graduated from Cheney University
Mm.
for law. I have that similar story. The only difference is him and my mom were never serious. The thing is, again, he can't take credit for me further my education. So when I look at statistics, the question is, what are you willing to do to be a different statistic of a success story? A 99% chance of death versus 1% chance of life. And all it took was the faith of a mustard seed.
Mm.
So therefore, that 1% overrided that 99%, override the statistic of someone growing up in a single parent household, override that stigma of IEP plans. And that IEP plan did not say anything about me being a two-con college graduate, mental health advocate, or that. Because the education system is now it's designed for Black and brown people to succeed. Because you also have to look at the brown versus the board education. You also have to look at the segregation and desegregation. We were learning much better in a segregated environment where it was just us in our own schoolhouse learning compared to combining people. But it also goes back to, people, it's about money, where school districts wanted to get that federal state funding
Yeah.
because they saw the inevitable future of what was to come. But moving forward, we can look at the statistics. The question I have to ask you is, what do you want to do to become a different statistic and be that success story so that you can uplift people? Even though I graduated college twice, that's good. Now it's time for me to show other people how they can become great and fulfill their own purpose.
Yes, absolutely. And I love how you reframe the statistics. People could start off with just that stigma or the statistic and having a negative connotation, but then turning it around to defying the odds. That is something you did with your life, and you're now inspiring other people to do the same. You mentioned something very important about generational trauma and those cycles. It's essential, especially in talking about navigating mental health for men, to understand the root of where a lot of those traumas are coming from so they don't perpetuate the cycle moving forward. That is something that people are often afraid to do because it is hard to look at the actual root of what you're going through and say, I need to make a change. Otherwise, it's going to show up in other areas of your life. Thank you for bringing that up because it is important to assess what are the patterns in my past and my family dynamics that are bringing all these things to the forefront.
Yes, it's just a matter of telling people that when you identify your pain, what you reveal is what you heal. It's time to get to the root of things and get healed. When you start healing, it's one layer at a time, like an onion, then eventually you get to the root, and then you become free and experience a breakthrough. Therefore, you don't have to rely on weed, vaping, hookahs, excessive amount of alcohol, or other stuff. You'll start to become more free and in the sense of you don't have to depend on something that's messing with your neurological senses, your vital organs.
Mm,
So when you become free, you see things in a different light and lens because
yes.
you're not meant to depend on weed and all that other stuff. The only thing people profiting off of that is the government off the taxes. Therefore, you setting this example for other kids on is this how we deal with our mental health when that's really not the truth manner?
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. And in speaking about the stigmas, if you could change two stigmas about how society views men's mental health, what would you change and why?
Everyone on this earth has a purpose, regardless of skin color, creed, religion, culture. Everyone has a purpose and everyone matters. Even those on the top of a mountain, those who are in between, and those who are lowest.
Mm,
Because I learned this quote, the first will be last, the last will be first. Then I also remember, you know, you have to remember that somebody's mind matters. Somebody's hearts matters. Because we're all breathing the same air together, depend on different qualities. We all are sleeping at different time periods during the day. But we have to be intentional about our mental health. We're going to take care of this on a priority level, emergency, or put it off. As you can see, putting it off is not paying off. For those who didn't hear it, putting it off is not paying off. You can look at the mass incarcerations. Like, I never seen an organization make billions of dollars off people just by being in prison, creating jobs. Different areas have different ways of doing things. When you start prioritizing mental health and become free from things, you'll start to grow apart from people. And you'll find a new group willing to level up with you.
yes, absolutely. You just said something so important, especially about putting off, not paying off. The more you put this off, healing is very complicated. It's a slow process. You got to take it one step at a time, one day at a time. A healing is not a linear process. There are going to be ebbs and flows. There are going to be moments where you feel like you're on top of the world and you're making progress. And then there are going to be moments where you feel like you're taking 10 steps back. In all of that, you need to learn that healing is worth the time that it takes. You are worth that healing journey and that process. You need to heal in order to move forward. And I think a lot of people either don't understand the value of it or don't have time to really process it. So, what would you say is a good first step for someone who wants to start the healing process but doesn't know how?
You have to see that there's a problem visually, emotionally, spiritually. People who are telling you things, whether it's in an intervention, whether it's people who telling you things at work, in a text, or people might check you because they care about you and don't want to see the worst in you. And I'm saying that from perspective of, you know, I graduated college twice. I've seen people get welcomed and embraced by their own parents. I didn't get that. I got embraced by other people.
Mm,
It goes back to my childhood when I was at a football game, as I talk about in the book. Well, because my parents did not prioritize their own mental health and their own differences first, and then come to better terms, it got passed down to me. Then eventually, later on in life, when I start being a student athlete again, football, wrestling, track and field, they were not present for that.
mm,
They missed out on that. But when they see me on television, you can't miss out on that. When you see my book show up on social media, you can't miss out on that. When my dad saw the judge for my book, he couldn't miss out on that. I say all that to say, when you turn your life around, be intentional, hey, you're going to reap a good harvest several times over. Because I did the work without my parents. And I'm not telling you just that you feel good. I'm telling you, look where I'm at now in life. If I would have done the work with my parents and they would have done what they need to do, this story will be a much different narrative. I could say my dad helped me with getting my driver's license. I could show you a picture of me and my parents taking a graduation picture together, but it's just not there. Not everyone that comes with you goes with you, and they're still missing out to this day. Mm. And what I'm here to tell you is that there's some people in your life that are still missing out on somebody that missed out on your work anniversary, birthday party, and much more. Life is too short to be missing out on things. So we all have the same 24 hours. It's no matter how we use it, 1 minute, 1 hour at a time. When you experience breakthrough, you'll feel everything lifted, you'll cry tears of joy. But ultimately, you'll show other people that if you could turn your own life around without the people that are supposed to do it with you, you'll show other people they could do it without other people as well. Mm-hmm. A couple of stories I can give you, like my story can resonate with the homeless to Harvard story. There was this girl who was homeless, and when she tested and got accepted into Harvard, an Ivy League school, most people who graduate from these Ivy League schools already have a career made for them. Just like that. Mind you, she was homeless, like how I experienced homeless myself. And you should also look at the Michael story, where his father wasn't in his life. His mom had multiple kids, but there was a family that was willing to take him in, put him in a private school, helped him get a D1 scholarship, had his national signing day, and then eventually he graduated from college and became a multi-millionaire and turned it around because he did it without the people who were supposed to do it with him. Then you also could look at the Will Smith movie with his son, Jaden, which is called The Pursuit of Happiness. I can relate to that story because I was pursuing my happiness on my college journey, getting my license and much more. I could have given up at any given moment, but I did not. Life is going to happen. But eventually, when you overcome things, there is beauties and awards on the other side. Like, for example, I got recognized at the Pennsylvania State Capitol Complex of Harrisburg with an award of excellence. I'm the first in my family on both sides. I got 2 Commonwealth citations from both the Republicans and Democrats. I'm the first in my family to receive a proclamation declaration. The most recent award is an NAACP award. Wow. For outstanding community engagement. I'm the first in my family on both sides. Wow. Because when you're doing the work on yourself individually, people are watching. People are looking at the fruits of your labor, seeing what you're harvesting. They might not say it, but they see it because more is seen than spoken. You can look at my television interviews and everything else on my website, ethanspeaks.com, and you'll see living proof. This was not no bots done. This was done without TMZ, Associated Press newspaper. It's a matter of just connecting with the right people that are willing to help you evolve in life.
Yes, absolutely. And congratulations on the NAACP award. That is awesome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yes, and I love that you mentioned that healing is possible. It's hard, it takes time, it hurts, but it is possible. And when you get to the other side, you can see the fruits of your labor and just seeing how far you've came in the long run. And I appreciate you sharing all of that and overcoming those obstacles to reach where you are now. And that is commendable.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yes. And so, what do you think are some helpful ways that we can encourage men to speak out and seek help for their mental health?
There's the resources available online, in person. Like if you're struggling with alcohol, there's AAA meetings, there's counseling, there's therapy, there's talk therapy. Those who are, maybe how I say this politely, even those who are blind and suffering with their mental health, somebody's out there willing to listen.
Mm, yeah.
Because I estimate over billions of people on this earth, somebody's going to listen to you. The question is, are you going to be intentional about the resources and do the work? If you're struggling with drugs or serious thing, other areas, there's rehab available. Hey, use your mental health benefits, go get your treatment for 30 days, get it before you start pushing people away. Because the worst thing you could do is push away your own help.
Mhm.
The story I can give you is there was this pastor at an Omega church, riding high, but he wasn't living by the word. I'm not going to say his names or anything, but I'll just say it starts showing up in his marriage, showing up in his household, showing up with people in the congregation, the meetings. And eventually, there was an intervention done, but he wouldn't listen. So people had to distance themselves from him, and they had to take away his position in leadership.
Mm,
He didn't learn at that situation. He learned when he hit rock bottom when his wife left him. Filed for divorce and got half of everything plus custody of the kids. If he didn't learn at that point, he learned when he hit rock bottom and getting arrested in jail. It went into that judge, really spoke some harsh words into him before sentencing him in the county prison. That's when the light bulb hit him. Then eventually, that person did redeem himself, apologies. He couldn't get his marriage back with his wife, but it's just best they co-parent. Eventually went to rehab for several months, redeemed himself, reclaimed his purpose, and now he's helping other people avoid the same mistakes he made. He may not be that multi-millionaire anymore, but he's living a better purpose with his life now than ever.
yeah, I mean, sometimes people have to hit rock bottom in order to have that wake up call, but it doesn't have to reach that point, like you mentioned. I appreciate you bringing up the fact that it's a learning process. It's not always gonna hit you 100% and you're gonna automatically know what you need to do next. It's a process that you have to go through day by day, you know?
Yeah. The other thing about mental health is you really got to evaluate the people you're being around because some people who are enablers.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's very true. And assessing your community is a huge component of managing your mental health and also having those people to hold you accountable instead of enabling behaviors that are harmful to your progress. It is important to have that community behind you.
It takes a village, and you have to be part of the village to contribute. That way, you're pouring in somebody's cup, and somebody's pouring into your cup.
Ethan, I want to thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. But before we go, I have one final question for you. What advice or words of encouragement do you have for men who struggle to manage or seek help for their mental health?
The best thing I can say is, do you want to lose your wife, lose your kids? Are you ready to go on this journey of addressing childhood trauma, wounds, scars. Are you ready to dive in deep and give it your all? Put away the cell phones, social media, electronics, and address it because you're going to be better on the other side. It may take a while, but eventually you will breakthrough. You can look at my story. I could have given up. I had several reasons to give up, but I didn't give up. Another story I can tell you is the Charlie Wilson story, where he went from being in the music business, hitting rock bottom, turned his life around by going to rehab and being with the right people. He ended up helping R&B singers Casey and JoJo while they were in rehab. He asked them some basic questions. Do you feel like you're, got this new wave of energy and all this other stuff? And they took the bait and said, yeah, I do. And then newsflash, he said, I'm not going to say what he said. I'll just simply say, paraphrasing, I don't believe you. And he told him the truth of, I didn't want to be in rehab. I had the drugs with me I wanted to use, but I couldn't use. People kept coming in the room every 15, 30 minutes. Eventually, he became frank with him and said, hey, even when you do get out of rehab, you can't go back to that stuff. You gotta not do that anymore. As in, it's no longer a choice to do it no more. You gotta cut it off the menu.
Mm.
Practicing sobriety. It's not just with alcohol or drugs. It could be other areas in life. And I'm speaking universal. But you don't want to have the memories of your kids saying, and you don't want to pass down trauma and scars like how somebody may have done to you. You're called to be a leader, provider. You're called to be the overcomer. I understand life happens, but there are people out here willing to help you and give you the tools, the resources, more now than ever. Because you have the insurance for it. If you don't have the insurance for it, you can get some welfare insurance. Believe me, it's out there. You already paid enough money in taxes in the system. It's time for you to reap the rewards out of it. So that's what I got to say. Other than that, my website is ethanspeaks.com for serious inquiries for speaking engagements. Buy my books. Come to your school, workplace, or environment to do restorative justice in circles practices. Be the mental health advocate. Please be advised, I value my services and my products because I'm looking to make an impact one life at a time. You're going to become a better person once I show up and be present.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you again, Ethan, so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you very much. Other than that, my social media is Ethan Poetic. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, LinkedIn, Facebook, Lemon8, Threads, Twitter, and of course, my YouTube channel. I am Ethan Poetic.
Yes, I'll have those linked in the description below for everyone to check out. And everyone stay tuned for more empowering episodes on Rough Edges. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Rough Edges podcast with Sarah I. Fox. If you want more updates on the podcast, you can follow on Instagram at rough.edges.podcast, or you can visit the official podcast website at roughedgespodcast.com. Thanks again for listening and have a wonderful day.